Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. Today we're talking about the Justice League, and more specifically, we're talking about the DCU's iteration of the Justice League. And even more specifically, we're going to be talking about who is going to be on this new iteration of Justice League under the tutelage of course, James Gunn and Peter Safran at DC at the new DC Studios. We have always, of course, had some quintessential characters that have been part of the team, like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash. You usually get a Green Lantern in there, and then the roster beyond that sort of varies depending on whether you're watching the animated series or if you're watching one of the movies, like the Zack Snyder Justice League. Of course, had Cyborg in there, and we have had lots of other iterations of the league. But in a world where the Avengers exist and are the biggest movie franchise, Justice League has really not quite found its footing in the theatrical game, and that's quite unfortunate. I mean, I think I blame a lot of that on DC and Warner Brothers kind of mishandling that as franchise, but they have a chance to rectify that now with the new DCU. So, John, let's talk about that, right? Because of course we are launching with Superman, then we're gonna get into Batman: Brave and the Bold. We're gonna have a Lanterns TV show. We have a lot of projects
Yep.
coming up. We have a Blue Beetle already in this new universe. We've already seen Joel Meridueña play the character once. So there's a lot of characters that we know. I mean, there's already one Green Lantern in the new Superman movie.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'll just start by asking you how you are doing, and then you're welcome to kind of just from there dive into your, list of characters that you would like to see, or maybe what we think you would get from James Gunn in the new Justice League under this new DCU.
Yeah, doing okay, but I think there's a lot of potential here to do something different. Now, it's clear James Gunn is a big DC fan. Like he loves DC Comics. He loves comics in general. So I think the obvious choice is you do the OG7. You have Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and either Martian Manhunter or Cyborg, depending on what continuity. I pray for Martian Manhunter because he's a way more better. I can't
He's
talk.
probably the coolest
He's a
DC
way better
character that gets the
character.
least amount of respect. Like, it's
Yeah, he's a
insane.
way better character. I mean, I like Cyborg, but Cyborg belongs on Teen Titans. He belongs on the Teen Titans. That's where he should be, or Titans. They eventually become. I think that's
Yeah.
where he should be because I don't know. He just fits there. Like he's just too perfect. So I don't think he's a Justice League member. It just it feels weird. So I think we're gonna get like OG7. However, there has been a lot of rumblings and tumblings. We have a lot of characters that are going to show up in Superman Not Legacy. We're setting up a lot of different heroes, a lot of different stuff. So I think James Gunn might do something different. Now, obviously, for the animated series, instead of Aquaman, we got Hawkgirl, and instead of Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, we got John Stewart. So not not tons of differences,
Right.
but yeah. So we got them because I believe they wanted another woman in there to help,
Balance
to
things out. Right.
help balance that out. So yeah, that's cool. Hawkgirl became a household name because of that. So good on them.
She had a really cool story too,
But
especially how
yeah,
they kind of tied it up with John Stewart's character. Not John Stewart. Is it? Wait, John. Why am I? Did I just blank on something? It is John Stewart, right? Because
yeah,
okay, because all of a sudden I was thinking John Stewart. The Daily Show. John
yeah.
Stewart popped in my mind, and I was like, anyway, like sorry, brain fart moment. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed how, like you said, Hawkgirl, the character, became a household name because of the show. And later on in the Justice League Unlimited, we had Supergirl. We added a lot of other characters. Of course,
Like
we had
Hawk
more
and
lanterns
Dove
and
and the Question,
yeah.
Huntress. We
I mean,
did get
Green
eventually
Arrow.
Aquaman in there, but he
Yes, we
was,
did.
he wasn't really part of the team. He was more so King of Atlantis.
Yeah,
But I think so we have that, and it's clear that James Gunn's a fan of the show because
yeah.
he that was one of the inspirations for Superman and all that. So he loves the show. It's a great show from what I've heard. I haven't watched it
Dude,
yet.
I love
I'm way
you.
behind.
You gotta get on that. Are you like
I know.
kidding me? Come on.
I started watching Batman
It's
Beyond. I stopped
yeah.
because of I watched Quiet on Set, and I now hate Will Friedle. So, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back to Superman the animated series. And so I'll go back and watch that because I really enjoyed that pilot as well.
Yeah,
So I'll get on it, I swear. But
please.
yeah,
Yeah.
so clearly he likes the show, but he's also got a lot of inspiration from Justice League International. We have Maxwell Lord, we have Guy Gardner.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have Blue Beetle, not the same Blue Beetle,
Yeah.
but and we're gonna have Booster Gold too. So we're gonna have all these characters. So I think we're gonna kind of get a mishmash of all these different characters. So, and then on top of that, all the movies we're gonna get is Superman, not Legacy. We're gonna have the Authority, although that's not gonna be hugely like concurrent with Justice League. It might
Right.
be like we might get like a team and they maybe duke it out, and then they have different
Right.
ideologies and they split off. One becomes the Justice League and one becomes the Authority. I think that could be a cool idea. And then we also have Brave and the Bold. We have Supergirl. We have Swamp Thing, and those are all the movies. And then for TV shows, I have them on my post-it note behind my computer. Sorry if I'm leaning. But
Yeah.
we have Creature Commandos. That's their own team. They're not doing anything. Waller, it's more so connected to Suicide Squad. We have Lanterns. That's a key thing right there. We have Paradise Lost, which is Wonder Woman adjacent, but it's not Wonder Woman. And
Yeah.
then
It
we have
also
Booster
takes
Gold.
place in the past, right? So that's not
So yeah,
quite
so that's not going to be a thing. So in terms of those movies and shows, this is my idea. And in terms of the inspiration for James Gunn, this is my theory on the Justice League, how it's going to be different. And the first things first is we're going to have Superman there. Obviously, he's going to be the guy. He's the head. He is the icon. He is the, quintessential go-to guy in terms of the Justice League. He's in the front. He's even though Batman pays for everything, he's the front guy. He is the like face of DC. Well, at least he should be the face. Either him or Batman, not Harley Quinn. DC, fuck you. But yeah, Superman. Like literally, his crest is the most iconic like symbol like
right.
on planet Earth outside of like the
Yeah.
crucifix. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's huge. So you have it's obvious Superman is going to be a part of it because that's who we're getting introduced to. Now, what the machinations of Superman not Legacy is going to be in terms of how the world, because obviously James Gunn is giving us an established world. He is giving us there are heroes in this world. It is established. We have superheroes. There's no buildup. We're not going to have some grand introduction. None of that. It's established. So now we just need to figure out how established are we. He did say it's a year 2 Superman. So with that, Superman might be, early in his career, but maybe not other heroes. I mean, Nathan Fillion is pretty old. Well, old in Hollywood terms, in terms of
Yeah.
being in his early 50s. But so
I mean, he can
it's
pull off somebody in his 40s.
he
He
could
doesn't
pull
look
he could pull off like
like he's in his
younger.
50s.
So I don't know how they're gonna do Guy Gardner. I'm intrigued though. So obviously Superman is the head of the Justice League. And then with that, concurrently, Batman is the guy who pays for everything. You're gonna have they are the
Dude, you
two
know what's
most
ironic?
popular DC heroes. So obviously
I
they're
was
gonna
just
be
like
in there.
like a side just a side note. I'm like this is this that duality is so iconic. It's Marvel almost like stole it in a way with like how the Avengers dynamic plays out
Yeah.
in the Infinity Saga, with Iron Man being the one who pays for everything, and yet Captain America is like the heart and soul of the team and like the the leader of the team.
Yeah.
And just kind of like them butting heads and everything. Because it always felt like to me that's basically what Superman and Batman's vibe should be, and it sort of was hinted at, of course, with Batman v Superman and then the Justice League movie, but we
She's with
really never
you.
quite
I
got
thought she
there.
was with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's still one of the better scenes. I still the first time Wonder Woman shows up in that movie, the music hits. I still remember people were just floored by that whole sequence. So yeah, I mean, too bad they gave that away in the trailer before the movie came out. But anyway, I digress. Back to the roster. Of course, Superman
Yeah.
and Batman. We don't have a Batman yet for the new DCU.
We don't have a
We
Batman
don't
yet,
know
but it
who it's gonna
seems
be.
pretty obvious
It's
because we have
pretty
Brave and the
obvious.
Bold. So we're
Although,
gonna be, we're gonna be getting Batman. Like it's
I mean, I was gonna suggest, don't you think, like, because even in the anime, so here's because you haven't seen the animated series, so you wouldn't necessarily know this off the top of
just
your head,
rub
but
it in my face. Why don't you? Like I get it. I'm
I
sorry. I didn't have a
no, I
childhood
mean
like the rest of you. Just kidding.
it's okay. It's all right. But basically, what I'm trying to get at is in the animated series, they really made it a point to kind of showcase that Batman is his own, like he's like a lone wolf, even though he pays for everything and he's a critical part of the team when he is around.
Right.
There was definitely arcs, kind of like in the DC animated universe movies, where Batman sort of does go off and do his own thing. He isn't always part of the team. He has spent periods just kind of not being there. So do you think that's where we start off? Like, it's not obvious. I mean, that's what kind of threw me off a little bit with the way Zack Snyder did his story. Is almost like Batman put the team together while Superman was dead, and then they're like, well, we need Superman to defeat this new enemy. But in the animated series growing up, and even in the animated movies, Superman was always sort of the one leading the team, and of course you had
Right.
Martian Manhunter around as well. Whereas Batman sort of was a loner who would sort of weave in and out of the team depending on the circumstances and the story they were trying to tell. He wasn't necessarily a full-fledged, full-time member of the league. Do you think do you think that approach would work here, or do you think they need to have do you think they can sell a Justice League movie without Batman necessarily being a big part of it? And of course, from a
um
larger story, universal story standpoint of how this DCU works.
this is
Yeah,
where the Justice League International inspiration comes
yeah,
in because he was the leader of that Justice League.
right,
So I feel like they're gonna have, Superman. I feel like they're probably not, even though the Avengers technically ripped off DC with like Superman and Batman, Superman the face, Batman the guy who pays for everything. They probably
right,
don't want to copy that again, even though they
right,
were technically the copy, but they'll be seen as the copy because they
right,
came after. So they'll probably have Batman be the leader and be like sort of the head of the Justice League. Um, because it feels like he's going to be more of a veteran, not by too much,
right,
but a little bit more.
right,
um, so I feel like they're going to do that. Again, it's kind of feeding into that Justice League International kind of inspiration a bit. So it just makes too much sense that Superman and Batman are going to be in there. How they're going to do it is up in the air. I didn't really get that far. I'm just kind of talking about members here, but I'm curious with how they'll do it because, you know, this is a Batman that does have a Bat family because we're getting Damian
right.
Wayne. So
Mhm.
we're obviously going to be having other Bat family members, at the very least, Nightwing and Tim Drake and Barbara Gordon. So at least three. So I feel like this is going to be more of a Batman that's going to understand a team more. Yeah, he's going to be still like kind of be, his old gritty Batman self where he's, lone wolf. Oh, I'm, dark foreboding. I am the night, kind of thing. But he's also going to be understandably be better at working with people because he has, a literal family. Insert, Toretto clip here. But so he's gonna have that.
Your brother never told you never threaten a man's family?
I got to
I mean,
one
that
up on
time you
you.
literally asked for it, so
I
I'm
literally
just I
asked for it
can't
because it
not.
just makes it. It was either asking for it or you were going to cut me off and insert it anyway. So it was like one of the two. And I will say that's very Batman. Never threaten a man's family, and then just
Yeah,
eats the fucking shit out of the
that's
scarecrow. Like, yeah,
yeah,
just
yep. Mhm.
just do that. But yeah, so I think Superman and Batman are going to be there now. In terms of other characters, I think we'll have Green Lantern. Now, which Green Lantern? I think they are going to go with Guy Gardner because Guy Gardner hasn't really been showcased that much. Sorry.
Alright, you
We
okay
did
over there?
get we did get Hal Jordan in the movie,
Yes.
so people know him. Jon Stewart was in the show. and he is the most popular in terms of that because I mean, people grew up with him. He was, he was that guy. So I think Guy Gardner is going to get some sort of, claim to fame there, as well as the fact it's that international inspiration, that Justice League International inspiration. So I think we are going to get Guy Gardner because I feel like if they do want to do a Justice League film, I think Nathan Fillion is a big enough name that'll maybe draw some people. Not, big, but like big enough. Like he's been in the industry for like
he's got
at least
appeal.
30 years, 30,
Yes.
40 years. So he's got that,
Yes.
Firefly. I mean, always a win,
Dude,
so
Castle, like I still watch that show.
yeah. But yeah, Nathan Fillion is
he's still in
beloved.
Rookie.
Yeah, I've heard the Rookie's still really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think they're gonna add Guy Gardner in terms of a Green Lantern, because I mean, if Justice League the animated series can shake that up with Jon Stewart, I think if they do plan to do a Justice League film, they'll shake that up further with Guy Gardner, because I feel like he's kind of owed some shit. Like, and plus he would be perfect. He would kind of be the replacement a bit for the Flash, because spoiler alert, I don't have the Flash on this team. He would be that plucky comic relief. So I feel like he would be the guy kind of making jokes. Plus, I really, really want to see Batman sucker punching him to the ground in live action. I think we all want to see that. So I think like just one-shotting Guy Gardner, we need that. That would be amazing.
Yep.
I want to see that. You want to see that. Everybody wants to see that again. So like, I think that would be great. But even then, I think adding Guy Gardner, he's, a character that doesn't get a ton of respect, even though he's a character that's just really interesting. Yeah, he's like the funny guy. And just as the funny Green Lantern, I think that is enough. But you could also go deeper. Like, I remember the Green Lantern Corps comic book for Rebirth. They did do an arc with him that was really good. And I know in New 52, he became a Red Lantern at one point, which was kind of cool because he kind of like fed into that idea. And I think that was definitely like, you could do interesting stuff with Guy Gardner. And I feel like Kyle Rayner is just he's too reliant on Emerald Twilight. I mean, you could possibly, completely change his origin to make him fit. Right. And then I feel like Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz are just not well known enough. But I feel like Guy Gardner has a bit of that name, bit of that, like, okay, I kind of know who he is, where you could be like, oh yeah, but not enough to be like, okay, I don't know a ton about this guy. Let's see. So I think we'll have Guy Gardner in there. And plus, clearly James Gunn loves his Justice League International. So, but going back to the animated series, I think we're going to have Hawkgirl in there. Because, I mean, I feel like there's a reason that we have her in Superman, not Legacy. I think we do have her there for a reason. Now, there is also the theory that I've seen that could be plausible as well, that she's going to be on the Authority instead and replace the character of Swift, because the Hawkgirl and Swift are essentially the same character, like kind of no nonsense bird people type of thing. So I feel like since Swift is kind of a nothing character from what little I know of her in comparison to the rest of the Authority, I feel like Hawkgirl might be her replacement. But with that, maybe if they do in fact do that, maybe she'll be like, okay, these people are too insane. I'm going to break off and I'm going to go join the Justice League. Maybe. I don't know. But I feel like Hawkgirl would be at least would be part of the OG Justice League. Either OG Justice League or OG Authority. I feel like one of the two, she's going to be on a team. So, and I just feel like with the inspiration from the animated series, I feel like that's just kind of perfect. Get another woman in there. And I feel like Hawkgirl just kind of makes sense. She's again, well-known because of the show. She's now like a household name because of that. And I feel like, that would be fun to do. Like, I feel like she kind of falls into a little bit of the Wonder Woman, like more warrior side of Wonder Woman, while Wonder Woman is more like about love and compassion. she does have that warrior side. Hawkgirl is definitely like all warrior, she's a soldier, you know, she's an alien soldier. So she I feel like that could be an interesting sort of like vein to go, like sort of like kind of almost like the straight edged, like I don't fuck with people, like don't fuck with me type of thing. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely like that's
Yes.
definitely like a militaristic character. That's different from Batman.
Yeah.
Batman is like, yeah, lone wolf, dark, edgy. Hawkgirl, I think a militaristic vibe could definitely be really interesting to do, whether it be for comedy purposes, for drama purposes, for action purposes. I think that could be a really cool um
Yeah.
character to have. And then moving on, Martian Manhunter. I think this man needs some time to shine. I get it.
Dude,
His
yes.
weakness sucks. All you need is a book of matches to make sure this guy like is like no longer a threat. I get that. But even then, he is a Oreo for Oreos. I mean, I want to see that. Like, I want to see my man like binge like 50 cases of Oreos. I want to see that in live action. I think we all want to see that in live action. But even outside of that, Martian Manhunter is a really great character. He was on, you know, Justice League International. He was on the show. So I feel like Martian Manhunter, and the fact he hasn't been on the Justice League canonically in the comics for technically years at this point, since New 52, I think, and that was over a decade ago. It's almost 15 years ago. Um, I think he needs some time to shine. I think he needs something. Like I love this character. I like from what little I read of him, he's just like a really interesting character. He does bring sort of a, you know, again, more of an alien vibe. Yes, you have Superman who's an alien. You have Hawkgirl, at least the more popular Thanagarian version is an alien. Him being like the most alien out of all of them, he like understands like Earth, but like not totally. And so I feel like that could definitely be an intriguing thing to do with his character. Kind of like being the sort of like weird outcast, like because like he's green, he's, you know, he has like aspects that other people could like relate to him. Like he's the last of his kind, just like Superman.
Yes.
Well, almost the last of his kind outside of Supergirl, but I mean, like he's the last son of Mars, like how
Right.
Kal-El is the last son of Krypton, type of thing.
On. Right.
So he's kind of like bit of an outcast, a little bit, kind of like Batman. He does kind of like he was a soldier, kind of like, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
Hawkgirl was, and so he kind of can bring in. He's green, like Green
Mhm.
Lantern. You know, he brings in that aspect. But yeah, I think Martian Manhunter is, I feel like, an untapped trope, because I feel like I do blame that on DC Comics, because I feel like he's just so innately powerful as a character, but he doesn't have that like grounded human like personality like Superman does. So I
Right.
feel
Yeah.
like, because he's like, you know, he is like showcasing he is an alien. Like, I'm an alien, I'm proud of it. Well, Superman, he's like, I'm from Earth, I was raised here, I identify as a civilian of Earth. While Martian Manhunter, it's in the name, he's a Martian, I am a Martian. Yeah, he does have a human persona in terms of, you know, John Jones rather than John Jones, or however the fuck they
Yeah.
plan to pronounce it. I hated that they fucking did that in the
Yeah.
fucking Supergirl show. It was so dumb, but like, it's John Jones. Like, but I'm talking about JOHNGONES, John Jones.
Yeah.
He does have that, and I think him being a police officer could be, or a detective could be like interesting. Like someone who's technically on the side of the law while like Batman isn't. That could be a cool, interesting way to do this character. But I just feel like Martian Manhunter, he kind of feeds into both James Gunn's like inspiration. He's a character that doesn't get a ton of respect. I feel like, just like having a good through line for this character, you could really do interesting things with him, and he
Yes.
needs time to shine. And after New
Dude,
52 essentially poo-pooed him away, he was
it's
like on
so
Justice League
stupid.
of like Canada or something, and it was
I
really
don't. It's so
dumb.
fucking. I'm like Martian Manhunter could be a $1 billion movie franchise. because you can look at this character and you could just look at the backstory, right? Like you said that he's like the last son of Mars, right? Like you went in with, but there's an incredibly intriguing story behind like the different species on Mars. Like you have the red Martians and the white Martians, right? I feel like that's sort of or is it the white Martians, and I'm forgetting it's the red. But there's like a whole civil war, like and just taking
Yeah.
over, and then in the Justice League the animated series, they had that whole like not only do they showcase the PTSD he has from that, but also like white Martians aren't quite extinct yet, so like that becomes another threat that they have to deal with. And Martian Manhunter is like the only reference for like like how do we fight this enemy, and he's helps the Justice League kind of figure out how to fight this enemy. um I think you can introduce him in the Justice League, but then I think what would be even better in an ideal world, if I was in James Gunn's position, I would do like a standalone Martian Manhunter, cool as F in hell sci-fi movie where
Yeah.
you give us the story of how he had to he was forced to flee Mars, and just
Yeah.
kind of showcase that. And because when you showcase that, you showcase how he lost his family and just who he was as a person in his
Yeah.
in his home. That will give you something to relate to, because I think when you just introduce him as a character who can shapeshift and is a police officer or a military man or whatever,
Yeah.
and he's just on Earth and he's got his shit figured out, you don't really see the trauma that it like sits behind his eyes, like, and then what
Yeah.
he what is inside. I think showing that rather than doing it in flashbacks only, or doing it as like like a prequel movie after you've introduced the character, I think it'd be great if they gave Martian Manhunter his own movie and
Yeah.
really realized that vision of like who this character is, kind of kind of fleshed out the world that he comes from, like Mars, and did it in a way that then positions him as a character who we know what drives him and what motivates him, where his moral code comes from. and
Mm.
and that will, I think, create an aura around this character, and it will give them a way to again ground his set of powers in the mythology that they build around the world, the Mars, the version of Mars that he comes from. And you can then of course set up a ton of other villains and future antagonists for Justice League movies, as well as other movies within the DCU. There's just a lot of potential, like you said. I think this is probably one of the most mishandled and most underused and underrated characters DC has in their archives. Like they have to not only use Martian Manhunter, they gotta do this guy justice. Because I'm like, he is made for the big screen. This character has so much potential. It's like, I was like, if you watch John Carter, that movie flopped. But I'm like, you take that and you make it into a rated R movie. You're bringing like George Miller or somebody like that, and you're like, make me a Martian Manhunter movie.
I
I
mean,
think that
George
would be the
Miller almost
pitch.
gave us the best Justice League movie ever made. So,
Yeah. So I,
give him
I think
Martian
that would be
Manhunter,
the
I guess.
vibe I'd be going for. Like sort of Mad Max esque, like more rated R. It's taking
Mm.
place on Mars. You've got Martian Manhunter. You've got a big, 100+ million, $200 million budget behind it, and you really just go all out. Like give us a freaking sci-fi war
Epic.
film, like war epic, like literally. I want to see, like, here's my pitch. I want to see Martian Manhunter introduced in Saving Private Ryan on Mars, directed by George Miller, or maybe even Steven Spielberg if he wants to finally take the dive into the
I
superhero
don't
world.
know. I would
That would be
nah,
epic.
not Steven Spielberg. He's busy doing other things. I think Jim Cameron could be great. He would never do it.
I
He's off
mean,
doing
he's
Avatar, but
he's doing
James
Avatar for the
Cameron would
rest of
be
his
awesome.
life.
Yeah.
There's too much Avatar. But dude, that would be amazing. I feel like this character has more potential than even like some of the other, like, yeah, we have done Flash so much already in recent years on TV and in the movies. We have done Green Lantern, and we were gonna get more Lantern. We're gonna get a TV show. We know we're gonna get him in the movies, multiple iterations. Hawkgirl, we're gonna get more of, and I think that's another underrated character that probably deserves more screen time.
Yeah.
But Martian Manhunter, I think truly just they haven't really even given him much screen time in any live action iteration outside of Supergirl and the Arrowverse. And I think what they did do with him, there was some really cool stuff. I mean, ultimately, it's a TV budget. It's the Arrowverse. It's a CW show.
Yeah,
So I would appreciate that they kind of give him the big budget treatment. I think that's definitely something that this character deserves, and the mythology and the story of this character, who he is and where he comes from and what he believes in and what he fights for, deserves a big budget movie adaptation.
most definitely. But I do have a couple more because it's got to be 7. Unite the 7.
Yeah. Unite the 7.
But I do think in terms of a character that we have, again, feeding into more of the Justice League International, I think they're going to include Blue Beetle. Now, which version of Blue Beetle, I don't know. I think because Jolimar Doña is technically established, I think they're going to go with him. Kind of a younger, like, if Spider-Man joined the Avengers kind of thing. I feel like they would kind of fit that vibe. He would be kind of like a younger character. Like, I don't know, just something kind of cool about, like, a guy who's, like, in his early 20s, kind of just starting to figure this shit out, and he's part of the Justice League. That's really cool. It would be if, like, Robin joined the Justice League. That would be just really cool. And I think, try to get some diversity in there. I mean, Martian Manhunter is usually portrayed as a black guy, but depending on who they get for Batman and Hawkgirl, they're probably going to go with white actors. Or no, Hawkgirl's Hispanic. Never mind. I'm sorry. I forgot. Oh my God, Isabella Merced, of course. Brain fart. I apologize. But anyway, get more of that Hispanic representation in there.
Right.
Because I know when people talk about representation, they usually go for the black audience, which is fair. Like, obviously, they deserve representation. But I feel like
it's
some
all,
other...
I know. It's more varied than that. But yeah, I see what you mean.
It is. But because in terms of, like, big, like, epic, like, things, we got Black Panther for black people. This was kind of, the Black Panther for Hispanic people, I guess. And it was a damn good movie,
meant to be, at least. I mean, it was a great movie. It's so underrated. I think a lot more people should have gone to see it.
It's
a bit by the numbers, but
I think getting
balanced, I think, right? Like, whereas when you look at a character like Blue Beetle, he is fundamentally different from every other character we have talked about so far.
Yes.
What he brings to the table is something that Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Martian Manhunter do not bring to the table. And it's very different and unique. And even when you're talking about it, yes, you'll get a little bit of that whole, like, Spider-Man sort of a, deer in the headlights vibe. That's definitely going to be part of it. But you're also going to get something like, it's sort of like a nice mix between an Iron Man and a Spider-Man, and yet he's also, like, graduated college already, so he's a little further along. He's got more wits about him, and I think the character of Jaime Reyes, as played in Blue Beetle by Shola Maridueña, he was much more well-rounded. He was grounded. You can relate to the guy. He was incredibly charming. And the fight choreography was amazing. I'm like, if you're bringing him back, bring his whole family back. I want to see George Lopez back in there. I want to see his grandma back in there. Bring Bruno Marquezine back in. That was a budding romance that I would love to see continue.
He brings that sort of familia aspect in terms of, and you can play the clip if you want.
Brother never told you never threaten a man's family? What's real is family.
But I think it is, like, I think, like, he brings that, he's a guy who understands family. Again, kind of going back to the representation of it, like, Hispanic people have, like, a very, like, close-knit, like, family, like, culture sort of thing.
It's part of the culture, right?
And I feel like that could carry over to Justice League. Like, he, like, understands the importance of, like, the teamwork and relying on one another and trusting one another, and, like, so you could have, like, fucking Guy Gardner being an asshole, Batman being a lone wolf, Hawkgirl, like, being like, on my planet, it wasn't like this. And Blue Beetle's like, hang on, guys, family, okay? And, that could be, like, even jokes aside, like, I feel like he could bring that sort of, like, aspect of, like, someone who, like, deeply understands that intrinsic and important nature of like being a team and being there for one another. And I
Yeah.
think that would be very important in terms of his
Yeah.
personality, most
It's
definitely.
a sense of it's
Yeah.
also he could provide a source of compassion and
Yeah.
grounding the team in a way that, I mean, traditionally, again, he's not a traditionally a part of the Justice League teams,
Mhm.
and he's also not. I mean, in the absence of a character like Wonder Woman, though, you want to have somebody there who gives you that sense of hope, and that when things really get dark,
Yeah.
I mean, Superman, of course, is one of those characters, but Superman in the Justice League also tends to be like he's kind of like the heavy hitter, the guy who comes in to finish the job in a lot of ways. Whereas, Blue Beetle can really give you a more grounded human perspective on things because ultimately he's still just a regular dude in a superpowered suit. Whereas Superman, of course, is Kryptonian. Like you said, like there's and we know that this version of Superman, at least in Superman, the movie coming out next year, he's gonna have his his Earth parents around, and how much of his Kryptonian heritage is still around him, we'll find out
Right.
whether they go the route of Man of Steel or not, or something completely different. Batman, of course, is a tortured soul. He's got Alfred and he's got the other Bat family members. But as far as like his parents are gone, like he's got a very
Yeah.
different perspective on what family looks like, which I think like fits well with James Gunn's vision of like broken families, and family is who you kind of the people that you
Yeah.
kind of come together with, like what was in the Suicide Squad, what he did with the Guardians of the Galaxy, like finding your family rather than maybe the ones that it's like the ones you choose to be your family rather than the ones you were born in, like the family you were born into in a way. Especially because a lot of his characters are kind of like they don't have that to begin with. So I think Green Lantern in some ways it also is in that same boat. Hawkgirl as well, Martian Manhunter, of course, losing his family on Mars, and he's sort of in the same boat. Whereas Blue Beetle on the other end brings something very different, something unique. Like he's got a family who fights for him, with him, alongside him, and so he brings a different, unique perspective. And like you said, that appeals to
A
an
broad
audience that
demographic.
otherwise doesn't feel served well. I think in superhero movies in general, that's rare to see because, of course, like Spider-Man, Uncle Ben is dead. Aunt May is around, but like his own parents are gone. Like that tends to be a common theme among a lot of the mainstream superheroes. Um, Whereas I think here with Blue Beetle, you're getting something very different, and I think like that's part of the reason why I think the Fast and the Furious franchise has been so successful over the years, is because of its focus on those familiar values, like
Mhm.
and how they kind of treat that, and they take it serious. I mean, yeah, we joke about it, but ultimately, I think that's one of the reasons why that franchise still has appeal all this many years later, and it's still growing, and all parts of the world, and then how many people go and watch every time those movies come out. I think superhero movies would do well to embrace more of that, because not every superhero needs, to be fighting crime because their parents died, or like, and that's what drives them to do it. It
Yeah.
it could be, I think, like Black Panther, for example, I mean, even for him, like his father died, like in the first in the Captain America Civil War. So like that was one of his motivations, but like it was also more of a, it's a regal title that he, like a responsibility that he who would have had to step into anyway. I just like the idea of having that there, where when you get up beyond that, you also have a really cool character with a cool power set that none of the other characters bring to the table. He sort of could be like DC's version of Iron Man in a way. And of course, if you get Ted Kord in there, then you can also kind of have that Ant-Man sort of a vibe between, Hank Pym and what am I forgetting the name of the other? What's Paul Rudd's character's name? And Scott Lang. Hank
Scotland.
Pym and Scott Land, that's sort of, apprentice, protege sort of a relationship. So I'm looking forward to that because I think that's something very different and unique that we don't see with a lot of other DC characters. So he would be a very, very good addition to the team. I absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah. So the last character I had, this is kind of like a do what you will sort of thing. I didn't know who to really pick for the last one because I was going to Justice League International. I don't think any of them fit. None of the other characters are all that established, like Doctor Fate, Doctor Light, Black Canary, and Captain Marvel are not established at this point. Ted Kord kind of is because we know that Joel Marjoigne, his Blue Beetle, is established because he did James Gunn did say he would carry over. So by that logic, Ted Kord is established. And then on top of that, Booster Gold is also established. And but Mr. Miracle is not established either. I don't think they're going to bring in new gods so early, because I think that was one of the worst parts about the Snyder Cut, Snyder verse, is bringing the new gods way too fucking early. That should be like for way further on. So I was like, okay, kind of racking my brain. I was like, Fire and Ice come in later for the Justice League International, but that's kind of like a combination, and I didn't want 8 characters. So I decided to just go with another established character in this world. I decided on Supergirl, because she is kind of, she would be good, because she's kind of like fits into like the Wonder Woman part, even though she's not Wonder Woman, but like into that like Supergirl kind of mimicking Wonder Woman in terms of like my thought process. But she is very different from Wonder Woman. This is the chance outside of her own film to really showcase this character like properly, because one of the biggest problems of the Arrowverse was Supergirl. Like, she was not the character. Like, that was like, okay, maybe at the very least, maybe like the Silver Age version, which isn't innately bad, but it's just not interesting, because essentially she's just a millennial with superpowers. Like, not bad, but like in terms of like unlocking that potential, it's so much more interesting in the comics, whether that be New 52 or even the Matrix, Linda Danvers sort of 90s version, or how they eventually did bring her back into continuity in the 2000s. But there's different things you could do with this character, and I feel like with the Tom King miniseries being kind of the basis of like more of this like hard-edged sort of like proper version of the character, I feel like you could do a lot with her, and like bringing into that sort of like two sides to every coin, like Superman raised on Earth. It knows of Krypton, respects his Krypton heritage. He identifies as a Kryptonian just as much as, but he's more, he still like more so identifies with Earth. He's like, this is where I grew up. I see myself as an Earthling. He still respects Krypton. He is still technically a Kryptonian, and he sees himself as such, but he more so, I am like on the outside, my power, the surface level of my character, I'm a Kryptonian, but deep inside, I identify as a human. I am a human. I feel like I am a human that just so happens to have these powers. Supergirl, on the other hand, she witnessed the death of her fucking home planet. She saw it explode, depending on which version, but usually that's the case, is that she saw, Krypton explode, or if not, she's like on Argo City, but even then she's aware of the death of Krypton. So that brings out a lot of like fucked up shit in her head. Like, she is like kind of feeding into the Martian Manhunter vibe. She is kind of an outcast. Like, she doesn't really identify with Earth. She knows what to, like, she wants to help. She knows what is right, but she's like, this isn't my place. This isn't my world. I'm not of Earth. I know that, and I remember my life. She was like a teenager, an early teenager when Krypton exploded. So she's like, I know this, and I struggle with the fact that I am not of Earth, and I can't go home. Like, literally, she was so fucking like angry with herself, the world, death of her fucking world, all this shit. She literally became a Red Lantern. So she has a lot of that rage, a lot of that like deep-seated anger inside of her. And I feel like that is so much story potential. And someone like, sure, she's about, I feel like, because I believe the Tom King miniseries is about her 21st birthday, and she wants to get drunk. So she's trying to find a planet that has a red sun, so she can properly get drunk. And again, that's like sort of like a, fun thing, like, Supergirl getting drunk. Like, that's kind of like a, like brings in like alcoholic themes of like I can't like handle my life, so I have to like bury it at the bottom of a bottle kind of thing. That could be interesting. But she's like, and she's like kind of like the polar opposite of, Jaime, because Jaime is around the same age. He's 21, around that same age, who like understands, as we were talking about, like the family aspect of like being there for each other, the compassion, the hope, the all these things that Jaime has, Supergirl doesn't really have. So I feel like that's kind of an interesting like dichotomy to have in terms of these characters. So in terms of the young ones of the group, that's why I feel like that's why I picked Supergirl. Sure, she technically wouldn't really fit on the Justice League, but I just feel like she's a character that deserves respect. She's a character that is going to be established by the time, if they do make a Justice League movie, she will be established. So I think that's just innately like just she has so many fascinating aspects, whether as a Justice League member, on her own, with other Justice League team members, like there's just ripe for potential. So that's why I picked her. But I feel like if you're doing this, in the comments, you could post your own, like if they don't do the OG7, then you can be like, no, they're going to do OG7. You're a fucking idiot. What are you talking about? I know we're going to have those comments. That's okay. But I'm just like, it's fun to talk about like alternate Justice League casting kind of thing, because it's like, okay, if you want to change things up, how do we change it up? Because the reason I picked Flash, because people have that movie stuck in their head still. We want to distance ourselves as much as we can from that. Aquaman,
Mhm.
Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. We want to distance ourselves from that. And then, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart are gonna be on the show. So I feel like that's gonna be kind of separate. But Guy Gardner is gonna be, established in the movie universe. So that's why I picked him. But and Martian Manhunter, and then Wonder Woman. There's nothing to work with here, because the only thing we have is a prequel that takes place hundreds, maybe thousands of years before the first movie in this universe. So it's like it doesn't make sense to me that we would have Wonder Woman. But hey, I wanted to bring some women in there, Hawkgirl, but also bring in Supergirl, because fascinating aspects. But I just think that would be fun to have like kind of a different Justice League, inspired by what James Gunn likes, and also, giving the fans like something like, oh, don't maybe expect everything we see from what we've gotten like in the 60s and that kind of thing of like
Yeah.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter, you know? So I
Yeah.
just think it's fun to talk about alternate Justice League
Dude,
castings.
it's
It's
not
cool
even
to think
alternate. I
about.
think it's yeah. A lot of what we have mentioned here has to do with what the DCU is going to look like around the time that we would have an opportunity to even see a Justice League team, and that team will evolve
Mhm.
over time, as like with the Avengers, we have seen that over the years. Who's on the lunchbox depends on what time of what era you're talking about, right? So I'm sure we're gonna have Flash and Wonder Woman eventually join the team. They're such an crucial part of the team they've always been, that I think I would think that we will see that at some point. But to start things off, we can have a very different kind of looking roster, and maybe even like a proto Justice League team that then evolves into something more official. Like, and even in the previous iterations, like the animated show, Batman weaved in and out. Like, characters got swapped out in Justice League Unlimited. There was every manner of combination that we got. So I mean, all around, I think we have put together a pretty sweet roster here. Whether you're talking about Batman, you're talking about Superman, Martian Manhunter, you've got Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Supergirl, Blue Beetle. There's a lot of characters there, and even beyond that, you can have Booster Gold in there. You can have multiple lanterns in there. You can have other members of the Bat family in there. These
Yeah.
characters are all being introduced already. You can have Mr. Terrific in there. There's a lot of characters that we're gonna have in what's gonna be a very much a living, breathing universe from day one when we got Superman the movie next year. It's not going to be a universe where, Superman is being introduced to the world and now we get to see Batman come out from the shadows and all of a sudden Wonder Woman is returning to to the world of man after 100 years, even though she was around in the 80s and everybody forgot about it somehow. Like we're not gonna get that. I think what we're getting is something that's gonna feel more authentic and that's feels lived in, kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy. That world felt lived in, even in the first movie. So you had a lot of history built into it, and yet it felt like you were watching something new. And I think that's what we're gonna be getting. So I'm excited to see where this team goes and how the Justice League evolves. I just want to see, in a couple of years' time from now, or maybe even sooner than that, maybe like this year, the Comic Con, they're like, all right, here's an updated slate of chapter one. And the final movie in that chapter is going to be a Justice League movie or something like that. I would love to see that at Comic Con. I mean, guys, let us know in the comments what you think about that. Of course, what do you think about our picks for the roster? John made some great choices there. I fully support the idea of like seeing characters like Blue Beetle, Martian Manhunter, and Supergirl get their due alongside your Green Lanterns, Batman, and Superman, who have always been a staple of the team. And Justice League is a franchise, is a team that, quite frankly, deserves its justice on the big screen. So hopefully we will get that. And if you guys have any comments, thoughts, if you have teams like John was saying, a combination that you would like to see, drop them in the comments below. Let us know what you think about that. And of course, as always, go out there and watch something DC related and come back and talk to us about it. We'd love to hear from you guys. Any ideas you have for topics that you'd like for us to discuss. If you have questions for us to address, leave them in the comments. And of course, hit the like button. We really do appreciate that. And if you've been watching us on a regular basis, hit the subscribe button. It will tell you when we are live and we got a new video coming up. And we do this Monday through Friday on DCU Daily every day of the week. And we'll be back here tomorrow with more DCU Daily topics. So we'll see you next time on the show. John, as always, it's been a pleasure. And until the next one, guys, we'll see you here with more DC news, updates, spoilers, reviews. So stick around. We'll be back tomorrow.